Welcome to this session of the Ancestral Healing Summit with my guest, Dr. Linda Backman. Our topic today is Origin Soul Mending. You, your higher self, your soul pod, and split incarnations on Earth, Interplanetary, and Angelic Realms. Dr. Linda Backman is a psychologist and soul regression therapist who's been in practice for over 40 years with 25 years as a regression therapist. She's the author of 3 books, including her most recent one, Souls on Earth. Linda, it's always a fascinating conversation when we get together. Thanks for joining us. Welcome.
It is my pleasure, Lisa. It's good to be back with you.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking a lot about the soul today. So let's start there with a definition of terms just to lay out some groundwork. When you are using the word soul, what do you mean by that?
Good question. Well, bottom line is our soul energy is what causes us to be alive in our body. And our soul, we could say, is basically divine energy, so that we have a slice, an aspect of our soul energy in our body that causes us to be alive. The remainder of our soul is our higher self in the higher realm, because we never bring, if we tried to bring 100% of our soul energy into our body, we would essentially blow the circuits of our physical body. Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying that the higher self is beyond the soul, the bigger version, or am I getting that backwards?
Well, so let's just think for a minute. I know this is always kind of hard to, as you know, Lisa, as you talked about the title for this interview, it's like, whoa, that, that's a mouthful. So yeah, starting kind of simple, the soul is divine energy. So if we're not incarnate, our soul energy resides in the higher realm, and we could say is an aspect of the divine, is an aspect of God, the source, whatever word fits for people. We bring, it's almost like a pie that we kind of cut a slice of that pie, and that's what causes us to live and breathe at birth. So our higher self is our soul energy, not in our body, that resides in the higher realm.
Okay, so then the soul, again, just so we have definition straight, that the soul, in the way that you use the term, is what fills our, what animates our physical selves, but the higher self is the larger, more expanded us. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's great. And I love the word you use, because I use it a lot too. That soul, that slice of soul that kind of is cut out of the pie, and I often can't talk without my hands. That slice of soul comes out of the, we might say, the totality of our soul, and it animates our physical, it causes us to be alive.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So now that we've ascertained that the soul is within the physical form, a slice of the higher self, let's move on to defining what is the higher self and how does that aspect affect our human life?
Okay, that beautiful question. These are things that I suspect a lot of people don't think about. So if we think about me, Linda, or you, Lisa, um, now we're in body, we're animated by a slice of our soul, and but our higher self, at all times when we're alive, our higher self is that, let's put it in numbers. Maybe this will be easier. So let's just say that when I was born, I brought 35% of my soul energy into my body. That means there's 65% of my soul energy left. That's my higher self, and it remains in the spiritual realm. And so, two kind of responses, Lisa, to your question. Our higher self, while we're alive, our higher self serves as one of our guides. Our the totality of our soul, or perhaps that 65%, serves as one of our guides. Many of us, including myself, have learned how to at times sense the support of our higher self when we're in body. And then the other important piece that we'll probably go into more detail because it relates to the topic today, but our higher self in the spiritual realm at all times has roles and responsibilities. Our higher self has a job to do in the spiritual realm.
Okay, then let's move that. For people who are wondering, what does this have to do with ancestral healing? We're
Yeah,
laying some groundwork. We will get to
we'll,
that part.
we'll get there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So then, now that we've cleared up the definition of the higher self, you say that the higher self has a job. What is the higher self's job?
So again, try to make this simple so we don't get too complicated too quickly. Our higher self. Okay, what I think happens for people, and the reason this kind of becomes confusing, is that I think my comment, my take, is we over fantasize, we over embellish. Um, if we're not in body, sometimes clients will say to me, well, I'm just ready for this life to be over because I just want to rest. Well, the bottom line is our soul, our higher self, has commitment to guide, also commitment to serve in a coordinating way in the higher realm, because there are, believe it or not, there are, we might call them councils, we could call them a congress. There are groups of higher selves that function in the spiritual realm with the agreements to assist Earth, to assist the universe. Um, they're like a parliament, you might say.
Mhm. Okay. Now, I think this would be a good time to point out to people who aren't familiar with your work that, as I mentioned earlier, you've been doing regression therapy for 25 years plus. And the information we're talking about today is what you've gathered over the years from clients. You didn't lead them with, tell me about your soul, etc. This was information that you got without asking leading questions. So I just want to make that clear that that's where you're coming from when you're explaining these rather complex
Right.
sort of spirit relationships.
Totally. That, my research, if you will, and it truly is research, is client by client by client over the course of many years. And then I'm paying attention to, oh, over the last 6 months, I've heard, 25, 30 clients say the same thing about something that's going on in the spiritual realm. Well, it must be valid because those 30 clients don't know each other.
Right, right. And one of the things that I find the most intriguing is that along the line you've heard people reference things that you had not heard of before. For example, the phrases soul pod, uh, earth-based souls, interplanetary souls, and souls from the angelic realm. Now, I know that's a big chunk of information, but let's go ahead and dive in and talk
Okay.
about
Okay.
those.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No time better than the present. Um, okay. Let's talk about, and again, we'll kind of unpack this slowly, and because everybody's probably wondering, what are all those words? What are all those words mean? So the term soul pod or soul group, and I always hesitate to use the word soul family because that's going to make people think, well, my mother, my father, my grandmother, my brother, and my daughter are all in my soul pod. And that's not necessarily true. So, soul pod means that when our soul is new, when our soul is created, we belong to a small group of souls. And those are the souls we have the most lives with repetitively, lifetime to lifetime. My term, the term I like to use is soul pod because it gets us away from that notion of they're all our current blood relatives.
Hmm. Right. Okay. So then let's go into the Earth-based souls, interplanetary, angelic realm, the differences between those. And again, this is what you've learned from 25 years of working with people.
Right. So maybe, I was thinking about this a lot today, Lisa, is like sometimes again, sharing all this becomes cumbersome and I, get concerned that people are finding it too complex. So let's just start with what I call earth-based souls. So what is an earth-based soul? That is a soul that when, I'm going to say you, because some people that are listening are earth-based souls, when you were created as a soul and were created in the higher realm at a higher frequency, when an earth-based soul is created, they are intended to incarnate almost underscore almost exclusively on earth. That's an earth-based soul, almost like designed, if you will, to operate, to animate, to go back to your word, Lisa, to animate a human body, probably over and over and over hundreds, if not 1,000 or more lives. That's an earth-based soul. The bulk of people on earth are in fact earth-based souls. Yeah.
Okay. So it almost sounds like a Jeep. A Jeep is designed for rugged terrain. So an Earth-based soul is designed to function on planet Earth with the conditions we find here. Accurate?
Totally accurate. And, as people are listening, I'm sure they're going, I wonder, am I an earth-based soul? Am I not? But yes, designed to animate this, meaning that, Linda has a human body, Lisa has a human body, designed to animate this kind of body, this kind of brain, this kind of digestion, this heart, this lungs, prepared to operate relatively well on Earth. Yeah.
Okay. So then let's move into the next one, which might be, instead of a Jeep, a spaceship, an interplanetary soul.
Might be. And, I'll just say, so this kind of makes sense to people. Because of the type of work that I do, I, there's nothing wrong with being a young soul. We were all young souls at one point. We all, went to kindergarten and first grade and second grade, as people and as souls. But the bottom line is the kind of work that I do doesn't draw young souls. Young souls are at a, you might say, a more basic level of figuring out their lives. So I tend to work with sort of mid-range and above mid-range of the level of evolution of a soul. Therefore, that's why I've learned this kind of, material, you might say. So a small segment of the human population are souls that primarily don't incarnate on Earth. I always think about, how do I make this clear? Souls that primarily don't incarnate on Earth, but incarnate somewhere else in the spiritual realm, meaning planets, star systems, could be interdimensional space, but are highly evolved souls that choose to come to Earth. But the experiences, the bulk of the experience of those souls is not on Earth and is not in these kinds of bodies. Yeah.
Right, yeah. And I know from previous conversations you told me that in general interplanetary souls have a little more difficult time functioning in a physical body. They tend to get sick easier. Their digestion just doesn't work. Things don't work quite as well as they do in an earth-based soul's body.
Right. It's sort of like if, I, Linda, raised in the United States, if suddenly I'm going to go live in an African country that has a very spicy or unique diet, then my stomach might have to adapt to that. And it would to some degree, but I might get there, and in the first week, I might feel, kind of physically upset until I adapt. Well, that's what happens, just like you're saying, that's what happens to an interplanetary soul that comes to Earth. And I'll just add, so maybe we, kind of get to the ancestral healing piece of all this sooner versus later. Some of you out there listening are interplanetary souls. You've not come to Earth many times, and there's one key reason you do, because sometimes what I call IP souls is like, what am I doing in this kind of earth kind of environment, it's because you are highly evolved as a soul, and we need the wisdom and perspective of interplanetary souls.
All right. Thank you for explaining that. And let's go on to the final, well, maybe not final, you might discover another one, but you've told me in the past that the people who are from the angelic realm, this is a relatively new phenomenon with your clients, isn't it?
It's new, yes. I would, okay, so I'm just so aware of when my guides, which would include my higher self again, they want to teach me more. And they want me to broaden my understanding so that I can assist other people, other future clients, to understand themselves and live their life purpose here in body. So of late, and of late means maybe the last 5-6 years, I have begun to have more clients that are not earth-based souls, not interplanetary, EB, IP, just to make it easy, not EBs, not IPs, but are souls from the angelic realm. And angelic realm souls don't incarnate frequently at all. We have had angelic realm souls on Earth for probably thousands of years, but not in the numbers that we have right now. Because just to finish the whole thought, angelic realm souls obviously come from the angelic realm. Angelic realm souls directly support the divine, and that's their purpose. And they have a wisdom different than EBs and IPs. They have a very deep love and compassion wisdom. And there are more coming to Earth now, because Earth, as probably most people would accept, Earth is greatly in need of deeper, more expansive love and wisdom. So they've been coming over the course of a long time, but not in the, kind of bulk of numbers of people.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we also are going to be talking about split incarnations, but should we hold off on that until we bring ancestral healing into the picture, or should we cover split incarnations next and then get into the
I
ancestral?
think I think what might be easier for people is to talk about, how does ancestral healing relate to this? And then I'll tack on split incarnations
Okay.
is an expanded way of assisting ancestral healing.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, then let's tie this all together and let's bring ancestral healing into this uh, slightly complicated, but I think well explained picture.
Okay, so here's the easiest place to start. Um, so I was gonna say everybody, but I realize everybody listening isn't gonna fit this. Okay, so if you're an earth-based soul, you have a soul pod, and your soul pod is about 10 to 20 souls. And you almost for sure know some of those people, some of those souls incarnate in your life today. And think about the big picture of family members, friends, favorite teachers, favorite mentors, that sweet neighbor that made those wonderful cookies that you just love to go to her house or his house or whatever. So earth-based souls have a soul pod about, well, let's just say, make it easy, 15 souls. And those are the people, the souls you've incarnated with over and over and over. And therefore, when you're working on your ancestral healing, you're working on your soul pod healing, because, you know, my son has been my mother, my best friend has been my sister. And so it's not just a bloodline, it's a soul line. And that's what's common for earth-based souls in terms of a soul pod. Interplanetary souls are also doing ancestral healing. Um, an IP soul has a smaller pod. IP souls don't have large pods, maybe 2 to 4 other souls. And this is where it just gets really tricky, but I want to keep kind of bringing it back to ancestral healing because, and I spent time thinking about how am I going to explain this so it's really clear. Interplanetary souls often incarnate on Earth alone. We'll come to angelic souls in a minute, but IP souls very likely do not know any other person that is an IP soul that comes from where they come from in the universe. So it's not that IP souls aren't assisting their other soul pod members that are few to evolve. But more than anything, interplanetary souls come to Earth to assist souls on Earth, often Earth-based souls, to do their ancestral healing. They're almost like a support team. And that's more their role than healing their own ancestral line. And so, there may be people listening and they're thinking, we talk about this ancestral healing. I think about my ancestors. I think about my blood ancestors, which is, the notion that most people would probably have. And, I love these people, but I just know I'm so totally different. So how do I think about this ancestral healing notion? It may be that that's an IP soul talking, and your job, if you're an IP soul, is you came to help others heal their ancestral needs, if you will, and not so much yours. Lisa, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Yeah. And I don't want to completely dismiss the notion that an IP soul doesn't have a pod and doesn't incarnate to some extent repetitively with those pod members. It's just that for everybody listening, if you kind of think you're an IP, and if you, I don't want to go far down, that's not the purpose of our conversation today, but if you're an IP, you're probably going to know that because not only have you always known you're different, but you've always known you're different because of either, as you, Lisa, mentioned, because of energetic sensitivities, physiological sensitivities, ADHD, other neurological kinds of things. You also have probably had a fascination, if you're an IP, you've had a fascination with the stars, astrology, the seasons, everything that goes along with astrology, because that's where you come from.
Okay. Well, then let's move into the angelic realm souls.
Okay. So let me just kind of define, and I'm hoping as I share these kinds of things, some of the listeners are like, okay, well, I kind of think that's me, and I kind of think that fits. An angelic realm soul often is someone who their absolute first kind of what they lead with personality wise, what they reach out to people with is this depth of caring, depth of love and compassion. I'm thinking about, obviously no names, but I'm thinking about clients. There's a woman that I know who's an angelic realm soul, and I wouldn't call her highly religious. I wouldn't call her strongly dogmatic and tied to a religion. But she will say things, and it took me a while to figure this out with my own clients. She will say things like, I just love God. I just love God. Well, the old conventional psychologist in me, it's like, what is that about? And what, I'm trained in abnormal psychology and all of that. It's like, what does that explain? Until I did work with her, until I did regression with her, because she's not a heavily religious person. And ultimately we discovered she's an angelic realm soul. And so we could say she serves the divine, but to make sure people don't, you can put this into religiosity if you want, and that's okay. But it doesn't have to fit in religiosity. It can be this sense of there is this ultimate source of guidance. And I always know it's there. And I always feel, I can't think of, big fancy words. So I'll use everyday words, warm and cozy and comfortable. That's an angelic realm soul. And they're a bit like IPs. If an angelic realm soul has a pod, an angelic realm soul has the entire angelic realm as their pod. All other AR, angelic realm, all other AR souls are their family, if you will. But they come here, they animate human bodies to teach us love and compassion. And, we're not going to go off and talk about all the circumstances right now on the planet that seem to not demonstrate love and compassion. But I think that most people would agree we are sorely lacking in love and compassion. So they are kind and dear and accepting, almost in a way you might want to say they're naive, but that's not really where they're coming from. They're really not naive.
Okay. Well, since we're not going to get political here, but we've discussed that the world is in a very strange place right now, and I know that humanity has seen hard times before. We've had war, we've had plagues, we've had horrible things, but right now is a very strange transition time. And as you mentioned a little earlier, the people from the angelic realm are coming forward in stronger numbers, as if there's a knowledge from beyond the earth realm that we're in a transition time and we can use all the help we can get. So my belief is that that's why we're all becoming interested in ancestral healing now, because that's a massive part of it for us to all heal the garbage from the past. So let's again tie this together as far as all of these souls coming in to sort of help sort out the mess that humanity has gotten itself in. Like, for example, does humanity have a soul that can be mended?
Ooh, okay. That's a cool question. And of course, we know, even if we don't, sort of support anybody's political perspective or whatever at the moment, although I'm sure a lot of us are pretty liberal folks or we wouldn't be into spirituality. But, we know, for those of us that are Americans, and I know a lot of people listening are not Americans, but we hear the terminology to heal the soul of America. And so, but I think there is, I mean, we're using terms in broader ways, but I do think there's soul healing badly needed on the earth. And, even if we take it out of politics and put it into this, look at this pandemic we've been dealing with, oh my goodness, how many people are struggling with the loss of someone, family member, friend, or someone who's maybe didn't die, didn't pass, but they're dealing with long-term repercussions from this pandemic. Therefore, we need more love and compassion to almost heal the soul of what's going on. But to bring it back to ancestral healing, I would hazard to say that if people listening suspect they're an angelic realm soul or they're an interplanetary soul, their job, for the most part, is to assist in the ancestral healing of those people they come into contact with. And that could be their mother, their father, their sister, their child, whoever. But that, EBs are different, and everybody please remember, that I commented, most people on the planet are EBs. But if we talk about advanced souls on the planet, experienced souls on the planet, Then you have to split that into EBs, IPs, and ARs. Nonetheless, I would hazard to say we all would benefit from ancestral healing, and we're healing within our pod, or we're receiving help from an IP family member or an IP close friend that's helping us heal within our pod, or an AR. Um, and yeah, I'm flashing on. I'll just say this really simply. Maybe people are wondering, well, Linda, what are you? So I'll just own that. I'm an earth-based soul. So I've been coming to this place, this location, for a long, long time. But I'm very aware of how, when I work with a lot of clients that are IPs and ARs, they are assisting many others that they're close to in doing their ancestral healing.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you're saying that they're assisting others as opposed to doing your own ancestral work, do you mean that they're helping them to learn about the process of ancestral healing, or that they're playing a role that triggers learning without necessarily being aware that that's what you're doing?
Well, I think it's both. I think it's absolutely both. I two thoughts about that, Lisa. One is I'm thinking about another angelic realm soul that I've gotten to know quite well. And this person is a spiritual leader of a large, spiritual community. And I would hazard to say that the role of this particular person is to assist those people that come into contact with this teacher, because he's providing beautiful input from a very, and it's not, when I say love and compassion, I don't want people to think it's like la la la, it's, simple and just ooey gooey, nicey nicey all the time. It's not that. It's deep teaching and deep support. But then I think there's the flip of what you said, Lisa, and that is that many IPs and ARs are helping their neighbor, their best friend, their exercise partner, their colleague with their stuff, with their ancestral healing. But,
Mm-hmm.
of course, if you're in a human body, you have a blood family, you have friends. So it's probably almost, we might think about a spider web that, healing your own stuff, helping others heal their stuff. Yeah. I mean, I think ancestral healing is such a beautiful topic, and such a complex topic, because in some ways we're healing many events, like, thinking about in the past retrospectively, as well as healing, right now. Yeah.
Right. Well, let's talk just a bit about reincarnation, which is a big part of your work, is doing past life regression therapy. How often do people come back as the reincarnation of a relative? Like, for example, could I have been my great grandparent who caused a problem in the family, and now I'm here in this physical form to repair the rift, or to even make it worse because I'm still, kind of, messed up?
Yeah, I love that, because what you just said is totally accurate. It's like, yes, I might be the reincarnation of my great aunt. Um, and I might have learned some things along the way as a soul. And so now I'm in body to assist. But, a lot of people don't think about, I think a lot of people don't think about what you just said, Lisa. And that is, maybe I'm a soul that hasn't done very much of my own healing yet. So I'm coming back into body, but I think this is less likely, but certainly possible. I'm coming back into body, but I'm still struggling with issues I haven't dealt with.
Right, right. Okay, well then let's just assume that the people who are watching this aren't the people who are mischief makers, but they know somebody who is, and they're like, you remind me of so and so from generations back. So let's just put it on somebody else for now. But thank you for answering that, because that is something that people ask a lot: is what if I was that person who caused this problem? I can now be here to make amends, or to, because only that person might know how to repair something that's really complex.
Oh, for sure. And that person comprehends at a level that is almost unspoken. I mean, these things are these revelations come to the surface in regression, and that's how I help people learn about these kinds of things. But so there may not be something conscious, but you still see the beauty of this person who's the reincarnation of some past relative, ready to heal something that occurred in the past.
Right. Okay. Okay, so let's go back out into the realms of complex questions. We haven't talked about ascended masters or archangels. What are your thoughts on those two types of beings?
Okay, yeah. So we'll separate them apart a bit. When I think of an ascended master, I think of, in general, I think when any of us, including me, use this term ascended master, we are talking about an earth-based soul that has had almost innumerable incarnations and has gained a high level of wisdom. um, an ascended master, some ascended masters, and we could drop names, but there are ascended masters whose names we don't even know. But you can drop names like Master Saint Germain and names like that. Um, but everybody, please just note there are advanced souls that are master souls that the names mean nothing to us. But some ascended masters will continue to incarnate. One, because they still have some cleaning up, you might say, of their soul to do, but also they can have a greater impact if they come into body. Because if they don't come into body, if they don't incarnate, then they can guide, but guides can't change anything. Guides can't, the classic thing, we've just gone through in the United States, guides can't affect an election. They can impact people, but the guides can't go in and tinker with the outcome and change the election. It doesn't work that way. But ascended masters are still incarnating. And actually, this might be just interesting quickly, but this is how a soul heals. Of late, in working with clients, I've come across, actually, I'll come back to archangels, but I'm going to blend together two topics. So everybody probably understands reincarnation. So when you think about reincarnation, that's almost like a sequence of, you have a life that starts in the mid 1800s and ends in the 1930s or whatever, and then maybe you have a life that starts in the 1960s, blah blah. And that's kind of how people think about it. When we're an experienced soul, and this goes to that term, Lisa, split incarnation. When we're an experienced soul, we can have two incarnations overlapping of a soul. And that's what we call a split incarnation. So of late, and this came up through a client, which I won't go off into the details of how it came up, but I started realizing we had more than one incarnation. I'll put it this way, more than one incarnation of the Gandhi soul, of the Mahatma Gandhi soul, the famous nonviolent Indian attorney who promoted nonviolence. We have more than one incarnation of that soul that has been overlapping, because that's a highly advanced soul, and that soul continues to come into body. You could call that soul an ascended master. So that's, kind of, it's rather fascinating to start looking for souls that come back into body, either overlapping, but also sequentially, to help earth evolve. And, we could call those ascended masters.
Okay. Thank you for coming back to Split Incarnations, because I completely forgot we were going to talk about that. So thank you for going there. So then what about archangels?
Well, this is my own learning curve. Years ago, when I first started guiding regression, I thought, well, archangels. So let me define archangels just so everybody understands that. The angelic realm, most people probably know this, but the angelic realm is coordinated by, you might say, the highest level of angelic souls that we call archangels. And some would say there are 4, but based on what I'm learning from a lot of clients, and others would say there are 7. Some might say there are 10, but I'm pretty convinced there are more than 4 archangels. I used to think, no, archangels never incarnate. And I've come to understand, because I don't prompt this material from clients, and it doesn't come from a client, that archangels do at times incarnate, and especially, everybody probably knows what I'm about to say, especially when humanity is so badly in need of the high divine love and compassion perspective from an archangel. So they do incarnate.
Okay. Now, this is kind of a tricky question. I'm not sure if you would even want to address it, but I've known people over the years who sort of claim that they are the incarnation of an archangel or an ascended master. And knowing these people, I kind of doubt it. But what if there's more than one person walking the earth today who says, I am the incarnation of Archangel Michael? How do you respond to somebody who honestly believes that that's, because maybe that one is, but how do you address people with that?
Yeah, that's very tricky. I mean, first of all, I guess there's a whole variety of things to say about that. One is, a soul as evolved as Archangel Michael could have more than one incarnation simultaneously. So that's completely plausible. Only highly evolved souls will have split incarnations, because energetically it's hard to manage. So it is plausible, but I think what happens is, and I talk with clients about this all the time. I always, I've said this for years. I've sort of joked and said, I've worked with, as clients, at least 6 Mary Magdalenes. I don't think all 6 were Mary Magdalene. That's what that person thought when they came for their regression, and of course we work on that. And it's not my job to accept in the client's regression. It's not my job to say, oh no, I don't think that's true. And so I don't play that role. But hang on, there was a thought there about, yeah, okay, thoughts back. Sometimes someone will say, well, I'm very aware, I have flashes of, just to use Mary Magdalene as an example, I have flashes of that time period in my mind's eye, or I have dreams about that time period in my mind's eye. So that soul, here's 2 or 3 possibilities. That soul could be Mary Magdalene. That soul could have been so closely involved with Mary Magdalene that they think that's who they are, because they have the memories of that life. And just to make it a little bit even more complicated, Mary Magdalene has spiritual guides. And so that soul could have some connection to a guide of Mary Magdalene. They're not all Mary Magdalenes. And yeah, but the bottom line is that we do have highly advanced souls that are in body on our planet because we need them so badly. But I'll say to everybody listening, because it probably pertains to most of the listeners, the more experienced you are as a soul, often the more complicated your life is. It doesn't make your life easy. It makes it more complicated, because your life intentions are usually pretty hefty. And so, it could be someone who says, boy, I have a ton of ancestral healing to do. It's like, I dealt with this abuse from this person and alcoholism from that person, or my mom died when I was 3 years old. And please, everybody, don't think that means you're a young soul. That probably means you're an experienced soul, and you're trying to finalize or complete a lot of your ancestral healing.
Mhm. Okay. Oh, wow. So many things to think about. There's one question that's been niggling in the back of my head. You talked about this like a half hour ago,
Okay.
but I can just hear viewers saying, ask about this. You mentioned when a soul is created. From what? Where do they come from? How does that work?
People ask me that question. Um, well, oh my gosh, Lisa, when you ask that question, it takes me back to, and of course, names left out, but certain clients. And I remember a particular client, um, and ultimately, this is a woman. Ultimately, we did discover she's an angelic realm soul. She's not an archangel. But I remember guiding her in her regression. And I guide not just past life regression, but soul level regression. And when she went into her regression, a lot of the bulk of what came through that she was speaking was talking about the creator. That was the term she used. I remember it vividly, and it's been years ago. The creator and the creation of souls. And so I think the bottom line is, whatever your paradigm is, whether it's God, the source, the Tao, great spirit, whatever, there is a high frequency of wisdom. I like to call it a conglomerate soul. I think, if I'll just use the word God for lack of another word, if we think about God, my sense is that is a multiple soul that is so highly elevated that that soul we could call the creator, and souls are created in the higher realm. Yeah.
Okay. Well, now we keep going back and forth in and out of ancestral healing because the stuff that you're talking about is so mind-blowing. I want to talk about that, but let's try to bring it back into the ancestral healing realm where in your work, I know that you also do between life regressions, et cetera, where you talk to people about their pre-birth planning. So when it comes to pre-birth planning between souls, et cetera, how do we make agreements to come into physical bodies to assist with ancestral healing?
It's interesting as you're asking that question. Absolutely, the answer is yes. And so let me see if I can encapsulate what was coming into my mind. It almost felt like a download as you were asking that really great question. Yes, we plan certain circumstances before we come into body. Now, I want everybody to be sure they hear this next piece. We have free will. Nothing is set in stone except for, are you tall? Are you short? Is your skin this color or that color? There are a few things that are set in stone, but nothing is like you have to marry this person or you have to have 3 children or, whatever it might be. But we do create a pre-birth plan. But what I was hearing in my head as you were asking is that both, how to say this, ancestral healing is crucial. First of all, the highest frequency, the divine, will guide us or encourage us, maybe that's a better way to put it. The creator, the divine, whatever, will guide each time we plan an incarnation. And the guidance will be in part, if not in large part, to do ancestral healing. That is crucial, because if we don't do that, in a lot of ways, we're not really healing the soul of humanity. I mean, if we're doing our ancestral healing, then we're evolving. And that means we're going to care more for the earth. We're going to care more for animals. We're going to help our neighbor. Ancestral healing is, as you well know, Lisa, is such a huge topic. But I would hazard to say, it's what was coming in, is that the divine strongly encourages us to do our ancestral healing work as we plan each incarnation. And of course, as we're when we're in an incarnation, because we're constantly encouraged and supported by our spiritual guides, that includes our higher self, to keep moving forward with the healing we came to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Linda, I could bend your ear for days. You know that. I love talking to you about this. We are so low on time, though. So I want to make sure that I mention your website. That's ravenheartcenter.com. And people can book sessions with you. They don't have to be in person for most of your sessions, but there are certain ones where you do in person. So let's talk about what people will find on your website.
Yeah, if people go to my website, they will find the individual work that I do. I'm doing the bulk of my work of late, COVID times, remotely, and I have been thrilled that it's going very, very well in terms of the types of work that I do. People will find virtual courses that I teach, both trainings as well as non-trainings. Yeah, they'll find my books and that sort of thing. But I'm doing, most of my work just as you are too, here where I live. And but yeah, and if people then have questions, they can reach out. Please ask questions. Find me on the internet as well, and social media. But yeah, go take a look at my website or pick up a book, and that'll give you more of a perspective.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. We just got a couple minutes left. Is there anything, I'm sure there's plenty of things we haven't covered, but is there anything in your mind that you want to make sure that we do discuss before we go?
I mean, what comes to my mind, I'm trying to think of how to make it simple. Obviously, we have, I mean, certainly on the planet, and then also in some countries and in the United States, we have a lot of challenges going on. I don't think anyone created the pandemic to make it difficult. I don't think the pandemic was created in the spiritual realm. I truly believe we will move through it. And so, I want to just encourage people. I know it's been stressful, hugely stressful, for all of us to deal with that. Know you're guided, tune into your guidance. Um, I do think we see, I'm hugely involved, I'm a news junkie, so I pay lots of attention to the news. We see, I think, in not just the United States, but certainly in the United States, an opportunity to choose integrity, and an opportunity to choose how to continue evolving humanity with integrity. And I would just say to people, the only way we evolve humanity is through our own behavior and actions and our own lives. And whether it's something tiny, like we have snow here in Colorado today, and one of my neighbors has a new snowblower, so he was just using his snowblower all the way down the sidewalk. I mean, that's a way to advance humanity. It can be just that simple. But tune into your guidance. Trust you're here with purpose, and trust we can live in integrity. Yeah.
Right. Thank you again, Linda. I know we're just scratching the surface here, but it's always such a delight talking with you. Thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
Oh, always my pleasure. Once again, I've been talking with Dr. Linda Backman, and I want to thank everyone for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this conversation in the Ancestral Healing Summit.